Thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. This is the first in a series of webinars that we kicked off really at the start of lockdown, so very much kind of on theme with how we've all been working in the last over the last almost a year. Although it's certainly not a new series for Red and Yellow, we've been running skills development, BEE, and other hopefully value-adding sessions for the better part of 5 years. But what we've really enjoyed about the webinar functionality is that it has allowed us to do them more often and with more people more frequently. So we really are enjoying this format. I think, you know, the volumes of people who are coming in still at this stage, I know many of us have had webinar fatigue, but it really does offer a great opportunity to have bite-sized, informative sessions without having to traipse all the way through somewhere, traipse all the way back, and take up too much time out of our days. Can I just ask, I'm not too sure whether the panelists or the attendees on our side can see everyone's face. Could I just ask everyone, I think probably our panelists, just to turn off their videos. I can see Cherie poking her head in there. Just so that we focus the attention on my beautiful face, and then we'll bring in Tania shortly. But without any further ado, welcome everyone. First, as I was saying, the first in our series of webinars for the year. We're going to try and do these at least monthly and on topics which are meaningful to our HR, our L&D, on our skills development and BEE consulting community. This one, probably a companion piece to the one that we ran with Tania in November last year. I can't believe it feels like a lifetime ago. On wrapping up your year, we're now looking at how we can start 2021 on the front foot. So hopefully less panic and less urgency. Well, no less urgency, but hopefully a little less panic than typically happens at the end of the year. How do we start 2021 on the front foot? Last year was very tough. I think we've all learned a lot, and hopefully by virtue of the fact that so many people are here, you know, we're still plodding on and we're still persevering. And this year looks like it's not going to be much easier. Hopefully there is hope on the horizon. And as business, there's definitely signs. I mean, we're certainly seeing it. There's signs of business returning to some semblance of normality, or at least new normality, which is really encouraging. And you know, if we've got any shot at rebuilding our economy, rebuilding our businesses, and then getting back onto some sort of track sooner rather than later, it's only going to happen through continued and possibly even greater investment in our talent. You know, so for advertisers, for the advertisers out there, the marketers out there, you know, there's the kind of old, what do you even call it, an adage that you know, when times are tough, you cut back on advertising. That's probably the time when you need to spend it the most. Yeah, investments in skills really is something that businesses, I know, are hard pressed to cut back on anything that is not committed, but certainly isn't something that has got any long-term prospects of success. So a tricky year ahead. How do we make the best? How do we make the best of it? And I think forward thinking and planning is always a good philosophy to have, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. So we've got quite a broad audience today. You know, we are primarily an advertising and marketing school, a very big push into design, and specifically design thinking in recent years. So there are a number of our advertising colleagues and friends. Hi to you all, but also quite a broad mix from all sectors. So we'll try and keep it a relatively broad-based conversation that has general applicability. There's also, I know many of you have had a look through the, so hi to all of our friends and hi to all of our new friends. Different levels of skill and expertise. I know that there are probably some people on here to whom this is very new and very scary. I know that there are plenty of seasoned technicians on here as well for whom this is also probably quite scary. And as I've experienced over the years, it's continuously new. You keep finding out new things, and every time you engage with somebody, an expert, you realize how grey things are, and how the stuff that you thought you knew is not actually what you thought it was. All right, so quick overview of Red and Yellow. We were founded in 1994. We're a CHE, SETA, and SABBP accredited private higher education institution. So have all the accredited bells and whistles, questions that we often get asked, particularly in the space that we're talking about at the moment. We're headquartered in Cape Town. We are going to be opening a campus in Joburg, which we're really excited about next year. So you've heard it first here. We are one of South Africa's top marketing, communications and design institutions and training providers, and arguably a leading provider of digital marketing training and design thinking training on the African continent. Very excitingly, we joined the onerous Pan-African network of universities last year, which really gives us access to some tremendous expertise, tremendous opportunities and scale. One of the reasons that we're able to open in Joburg is with their support, and we're also the first creative and far more digitally savvy and digitally geared institution within the network. So it's a very exciting time for us, and hopefully for all of our clients and students. A quick introduction. I'm going to introduce, now is probably as good a time as any to introduce our guest speaker today, Tania Rhode, who I've had the pleasure of knowing for a number of years. We've worked together on a number of engagements. That's that fantastic symbiotic relationship of training provider and skills development facilitator / PE consultant / HR expert that really helps deliver value for clients across the training and skills development space. So Tania is, if I just jump across to my notes, make sure I do her intro a proper service. She's been working in the space for well over 15 years and is very well versed in all SETA compliance matters ranging from accreditation, learning program management, DG funding, and all SDF related services. So a fantastic wealth of knowledge and a really great person to collaborate with. She's got a strong passion for creating impactful skills development solutions across all sectors, and her particular skills lie in integrating skills development with BEE, ensuring companies can maximize points on their scorecard. So a perfect person to have on this in this conversation. And just from our own team, you've met me, also on our call, but with the videos off, Megan Slater, our head of sales, Rudy and Cherie, who are our business relationship managers. And I hope if you haven't spoken with them already or don't know them already, you will be speaking with them and we'll at least connect with them afterwards. I'm waiting and ready to help out with any questions and queries that you might have. So a quick kind of flow for today. I'm going to have to keep a separate eye on time. I do have a tendency to get overexcited and ramble on down rabbit warrens. If you're going to ask questions, please don't use the chat functionality. Please use the Q&A functionality. The team will be monitoring it, and there will be a break a little bit later to answer any of your questions. If we don't get around to answering your questions today in the chat itself, we'll make sure that we follow up afterwards. I'm going to be upfront. I don't profess to be an expert. I think I know enough to know what I don't know, and that's still a lot. So we will do our best between Tania and I to answer as many questions as possible. But I do know from years of experience of doing these sorts of things that there are plenty of technical people with very specific questions. Whilst we might not get you a right answer now, and we'd rather not hazard getting wrong answers to you and everyone else, we will make sure that we follow up afterwards. And we will send around the deck and the recording afterwards. So if you miss anything or you want to drill back on something, you will have the opportunity to get up. And by all means, contact us afterwards. We're also going to be keeping this a very conversational piece. So the agenda, we're trying to keep it quite light on slides and keep it more conversational. So it'll be more Q&A format. I'll be peppering, or hopefully not peppering, Tania with questions and just asking her about what she thinks and channeling some of the conversations that I've had over the years and recently with our own clients and just my own thoughts and concerns. So without further ado, I'm going to invite Tania to turn on, or one of our facilitation team to turn on Tania's camera so that you can all see her, and to unmute her.
Let's kick it off. I'm quite excited to get going. And just, as mentioned earlier on, we want to discuss the planning for 2021. A lot of companies are having their financial year ends now. So January, February, March, it's a very busy period for companies. They're obviously also going through some of their verification audits. So they will all need to start kicking off the year with the plan for the upcoming year. And that's what our conversation is going to be about today, is really how to get everything in motion Don't leave everything to the last minute again and find yourself next year trying to scramble around and spend the money. Yeah, so that's what we're going to be chatting about today. Thank you, Andrew. Thank you.
Great. Okay. Well, let's. I've probably spent too long framing the discussion already. So before people get tired of me, I suppose let's jump straight into the first question. I suppose, and that is, you've just mentioned companies should be thinking about their planning now. So now that they're starting to get into that mind frame, and what should they be thinking about? How do you go about doing this?
So I think there's a couple of things that we need to look at and companies need to focus on. Number one that I've got there is WSP submissions. So all companies know that at the moment, SETA systems have opened. Most of the SETA systems have opened. There's a couple that are still pending, but most of them are open now. So companies should not leave this to the last minute. I often find that, with the WSP submissions, your HR managers or your training managers, whoever is responsible for this, they tend to think, no, I've still got time. The deadline is only the 30th of April. It is vitally important to make sure that you start this process as soon as possible. So just to give you an idea, within my organization, last year we submitted 20 WSPs across various SETAs. And I try to make sure that my team submits all of our clients by the 31st of March for the latest. We actually try to push to submit most by the end of Feb. And the reason for that is because SETA systems in April start slowing down tremendously because thousands of people are trying to access the systems. And, just to give you an example, I know a lot of people probably have a lot of complaints about this. Services SETA is currently not in a great state. They've got a lot of backlogs in terms of just the issues with their system. I realized in the week that they actually have upgraded the system. So there's a number of new additional tabs that pop up there now. I'm still navigating my way there, but the thing is that because of the SETA system with the various challenges that they have now at the moment, it's very important to do the pre-application. So gain access to the services SETA system and make sure that you are able to access it. One of the challenges that I've been picking up is that if a company is registering for the first time, the system will send you an email and get you registered. But what has been happening during last year and most of end of last year is that you put in the login details after activating that account, that profile, and then it pops up and says that you cannot access the system, the password is incorrect. And then you have this process that now starts where you constantly have to email them, ask them to fix up the issue. So I would advise, and the reason I'm touching on services SETA is because they are the one of the SETAs that deal with the biggest amount of stakeholders and the biggest amount of services, sectors. So very important, get access to your SETA systems and start your processes. You don't want to be in April where systems are giving issues and you cannot access the system. So try to get on top of that immediately. The second point I have there is the BBBEE spend in line with your WSP. So again, when you're compiling your WSP, what is a WSP? A WSP is a workplace skills plan. So it comprises of two parts: your workplace skills plan, which is your plan for the year ahead. So for most companies, it would be starting from 1st of April until 31st of March next year that you have to report on what your plan training is going to be. In terms of your past training, that would have been from April last year to March this year. Now, when you are compiling your information for your WSP, you must think about your BBBEE as well. A lot of companies tend to separate the two and they think, okay, we'll deal with BBBEE later, let's get through the WSPs, or we deal with BE now and we deal with the WSP later. So it's very important a company ensures that they submit the WSP, because if you do not submit your WSP and you don't have your approval letter that your WSP was submitted as well as approved, your every cent that you spent under skills development will be counted as zero if you cannot prove that you submitted it and if you cannot prove that it was actually approved by the SETA. So very important, when you're compiling all of the data for your WSP, think about BBBEE as well, your verification files for skills development. All of that data is exactly the same data that you are putting into your plan and it's also the data covering what training took place in the past year. So while you're doing this process, include the BE side, start building. So just to give a basic example, if you are planning the year ahead and you've got some learnerships that are commencing from 1 March, make sure that you get all the documentation needed to get that learnership started. Once you've got the documentation and you've captured everything in your WSP, take that information and plug it into the BE side. And that kills 2 birds with 1 stone. Instead of waiting and at the end of this year, you start scrambling around looking for the information, build the 2 files at the same time. It will save you a lot of time. Also, in terms of SETA funding, which we'll be unpacking as well, a lot of SETAs have started opening up their funding window. November, December, there was some that I've seen in January, and there's also a couple that have actually opened now. I know that the one of them is the mining SETA, MQA. They have also just opened up a funding window now. So it's very important to keep an eye out for this. And, you know, I can't stress this point enough. Even though you might be a stakeholder on the SETA system and you should be getting the emails from them, it doesn't always happen. So it's advisable to have someone in the organization or your STF to be checking the SETA site that you belong to on a regular basis. And when I say regular, at least once a week, because often a window opens up and nobody sees it, and someone maybe sends you the email about the window, or your SCF might only see it in the last week of the closing date. So, and start applying, because again, and we'll unpack that further. But if you are spending money as a company on training and development, you would be able to cover a portion of that cost by applying for funding from the SETA. And, you know, some companies say, but, you know, what's the use in applying? We never get the funding. It doesn't matter. Just apply. This, you know, it really is. It's not a very daunting task to do the application, but just try and do the application, because that money nobody else is going to give to you, and it will be income that is coming into the business. So it is important to try and access these funding windows with the various SETAs.
So there's
you can, yeah.
Yeah, there's I'd like to build on that. Firstly, well, one is just a question on funding. But before we get to that, I just want to stress a point, and interested for your take on this. But you know, we've got a number of clients, particularly smaller clients, who don't have in-house SDFs. They might, if they're lucky, they've got an HR manager, but this really is not the, you know, it often is the last thing that they're thinking about, and they get so disillusioned with, particularly in the last year. You know, with no funding coming through, they get disillusioned with the SETA, and they start to wonder whether it's worthwhile. I'm not even going to submit my WSPs. I don't get anything back. I've applied for funding so many times, you know, nothing comes of it, and they stop. And, you know, what we always try and encourage there is to say, look, we understand the frustrations. Just keep persevering, keep submitting. Don't stop submitting. Don't stop applying for those. You might not get it every single time, but you definitely won't get it if you don't. And once you get into the routine, it becomes more of a habit. I think those who are used to it probably it's just something that you do, whereas those who aren't, it can seem quite daunting.
Yeah. So, you know, and I'm going to give you another example. The Services SETA had a conference about 2 weeks ago, an online virtual conference. And, you know, they obviously discussed many of their challenges. I applied for funding for one of my clients round about, I think it was October last year, when they opened up a funding window. Haven't heard anything, didn't expect to be getting anything back. And last week I received an offer letter stating that we've been awarded the funding for this particular company, and they actually provided all the funding for the 12 interventions that we applied for. We received the funding for the 12. Well, the approval letter and the offer for us to accept. So again, I mean, I almost fell over my seat, because it's Services SETA, and I definitely was not expecting this. So, you know, just apply, and normally with the funding applications, it's sort of the same documentation that you have to submit. So it's the company registration documents, your tax documents, and then obviously in addition to that, it's what programs do you want to apply for. And I must say that the funding windows and the applications have become easier. Years ago, when I used to do funding applications, it used to be a handwritten funding application. You had to print out the document, complete all of the information, get all signatures, and get it scanned and submitted to the SETAs. Most of the SETAs now have the funding applications online. So it is an easier process. Just, persevere, like you said, Andrew, persevere, continue submitting, because you don't know when that one day is going to come when you actually do get the funding. And then very important as well, if you do get the funding, make sure that you perform on that project, because if you at any point accept a funding offer from the SETA and you want to now start rolling out those programs, or you miss a specific deadline date. So there's a lot of administration and deadlines that the SETAs put in place. Once you accept the funding, you then sign an MOU. And one important point is that the funding is not paid in a lump sum. Some companies think that it's a lump sum of money that will come in. The SETAs do not do that. They paid over 4 tranches over a period of a year. So, and just to give an example, the first deliverable would be, they just want your company documents. They want certified copies of the learners that will be placed on the programs. They want the accreditation certificate of the training provider. That's the first deliverable. And by just submitting that first deliverable with your invoice, that helps you to kick off your project. But if you miss any of the deliverable dates that are in the MOU, the SETA has the right to retract the funding and to say that you're actually not performing. And you don't ever want to be in that situation, because if you don't meet any deadline, you will be flagged as a non-performing company, which then is detrimental to you, because if you try and apply for funding in the following year, they might look at it and say, we actually awarded funding to this company before, but they couldn't implement the project. So they will rather than look at giving funding to someone else who potentially can come in and implement the project.
All right. Okay, I mean that's very, very useful information to know. So obviously what you want to do is strike that balance between not getting too grandiose and too complex in your thinking and your planning, and then struggle to implement it. Be consistent. Make sure that whatever you ask for, you're confident that you'll be able to deliver. And that's, I mean, very quick plug. This is exactly where a collaboration with an SDF and a training provider is very, very useful. If you are unsure, have a conversation. It could be with us, it could be with others, to say, we want to put in some funding. We're not quite sure on what programs or what prices or how we're even going to do that. And your SDF and a training provider can help put together a plan for you and then manage you through that process. Just on that topic of continuing on SETA funding, just for one last. Now, what is happening with this? Last year was a nightmare for so many different reasons. There was just a complete halt on all funding. You've mentioned, I mean, I'm thrilled to hear that you got funding and full funding through for your clients. That's certainly, seems to be the exception rather than the norm. What's going to be happening this year? Do you have any inside info or any inside scoops that you can share with us?
I do foresee that SETAs are going to be able to pay out funding this year. Last year, look, they took a huge knock. Because of the STL holiday payment that came into effect in last year I think it was for 4 months. That is what the SETA lives on, is the STL payments, the skills development levies that gets paid to them. And that's what that money that gets allocated to discretionary grant funding, to some of the operations. So it's, they did take a huge knock. And there's some funding applications that I had submitted last year and still have no feedback on it. But I do think that this year they are definitely going to be. Why I received the funding is because every SETA's financial year end is the 31st of March. So before the 31st of March, they must have allocated all discretionary grant funding. And so I suspect that you'll start seeing a lot of SETAs sending out these letters to companies now saying, you've been awarded for this, and maybe you applied in the middle of last year and didn't hear anything, but there's a possibility that you might be awarded that funding because their financial year. And I do think that SETAs are going to be pushing, because they know that it was a really tough year last year for everyone in the country and everyone around the world. So I do think that they are going to start releasing funding in terms terms of the funding applications, and I'm open for any applications, in particular to your SETA that you're registered with.
Well, let's keep our fingers crossed. And I think it would come as welcome respite to a lot of companies out there. So, all right, let's move on. I'm just going to quickly pause just to mention that we've got 3 questions which we'll get to. So, Mariana, Karen, and Anonymous, we have seen you. We've got a Q&A coming up, and we'll answer your questions when we get to that. So we haven't forgotten you, aren't ignoring you. All right. So WSPs, Tania very proactively, which I think is a theme about this entire session today, getting on the front foot, making sure she gets hers done by the 31st of March. Deadline date of 30 April. Yes, what is your kind of a proposed or preferred approach on how to tackle these?
So with the WSPs, I think the most time-consuming part is the OFO codes, especially if it's a company that hasn't submitted a WSP before. It becomes a bit daunting because the OFO codes is a bit of a technical element of the WSP. So it's important to extract the information of all your employees and look at the SETA system to identify. So a lot of SETA systems actually, if you have a lot of employees in your company, they actually have a template that sits within the WSP system. And you can download that template to be able to capture all of your employees' information and upload it instead of sitting there and capturing every single employee individually, because it will literally take you about 8 minutes. I've timed it. It will take you about 8 minutes to capture one employee. So by doing the bulk upload, that template helps you to be able to capture everything, make sure everything is in there, and do one upload, and all your employees come into the system. Look, there might be some errors here and there because the systems are quite finicky. So you need to make sure that if you're capturing information inside that template, you are using the drop-down box. So you can obviously copy and paste, but just make sure there's certain sections where you actually have to select from a drop-down list. And if you don't do that, sometimes the system kicks it out and it gives you an error and says that the employee's data couldn't be uploaded for whatever reason. But the systems are generally good. It will give you an indication of which lines gave the error, or it will highlight that one column wasn't filled in correctly. So I think number one is to get your employees and map all of their positions to the OFO codes. I actually saw about 2 weeks, I think a week ago, Services SETA has a notice on their website where they've launched the first OFO mapping tool. So I've not tested it out as yet because for various reasons, but there is apparently it's the first one. I go onto their website, go and have a look at it. I think what it's supposed to do is to help you to easily map your employees to the specific OFO code. Then also, as I mentioned earlier on, make sure that you register on the system as soon as possible so that you gain access to the system. Prepare all your data. When preparing all your data, you're looking at what is the past training, what is the future training. In terms of that, what is the information that you need to gather? So it's who is the employee that is being, if we're looking at past training, who was the employees that were trained? Now, a very, very important point here. So let's look at the reporting period. If the past training reporting period is 1 April last year to 31st of March this year, but you have an employee who has now gone through training and resigned in November and left the company and is no longer with the company, you still have to record that person. Because even though they've left the company, you have to record them because it is training that has taken place. So that's one thing that often comes up. Very important, you still need to report on that person. Also gather your invoices. So for the plan ahead, make sure that whenever a training intervention takes place, you are saving the invoice somewhere in a folder, you're saving the proof of payment. That is what's required for BBBEE to make sure that you're claiming your spend there. And then in terms of the WSP, you need to identify who was the person or people that attended that training, what was the total cost of that training course, and some SETA systems require whether the training was accredited or not. Some of them ask what is the NQF level. So make sure for the year ahead, when you're now capturing all of this information, that you're capturing all of that data. Because if you get to the WSP submission and you haven't captured that in the past year, you are going to spend quite some time scratching through all of your previous your folders, trying to pick up the documents, phoning training providers, asking them for all this information. So if you haven't done all of that, start this year, so that next year when you go through the WSP process, it is a much smoother process for you. Gathering of all the invoices, and then once you've got all of your data for your WSP and your ATR, which is the annual training report, you've got all your invoices, you've mapped your codes, start the capturing. What I also advise companies to do is don't wait until you have all the data to start the process. If you've got all of your employee data, start with the capturing of your employees. Make sure that that's in the system. Then move on to the next step. And normally with all the SETA systems, they have sections where you need to do a survey. These surveys are really, to be honest, I don't think they actually use this information, but the surveys have been there for many years. But go and pull the survey up, download the survey, or go in and complete those sections. So complete the sections that you can complete quickly. And we all know that the WSP and the past training is what takes up the bulk of the time in terms of capturing. So try and get all of the other elements completed so that you have more time to spend on the WSP and the ATR. And yeah, I think just again, try and submit before April is upon you.
Fantastic. I'm going to pick up just one of the queries now because it just really fits in. Marianne has asked, is it acceptable to change an OFO code for the same employee from 1 year to the next? If you've picked up that your initial identification of the OFO, if you may have picked up that your identification of it, I assume was incorrect, or was
Yes. So I mean, we come across that all the time. I sometimes come across clients who have submitted previously, and when I look at the OFO codes, I can see that it's not mapped correctly at all. So the SETA is not, there's no repercussion if you've recorded them the previous year with the incorrect OFO code. The SETAs, I think, understand that the OFO codes are not an easy thing to work with. And as a company submits each year, they start working with the OFO codes, you then start understanding how to map them. So you can, if your OFO codes are changing in the following year, that's perfectly fine. Remember, if there's an employee in the company who has been promoted to a new position, their OFO code will change. So, you can definitely have changes in OFO codes from the previous year.
Fantastic. And just for the real noobs out there, what is an OFO code?
So an OFO code is what it stands for is the Organizing Framework of Occupations. And what that is that every single position in the whole of South Africa has an OFO code. From the level of a T lady has an OFO code right up to a CEO level. So every single occupation out there is an OFO code. I think currently we're probably sitting on 7,500 codes within the country. So yeah, it's a code that is mapped to every occupation. And the reason that the SETAs brought this out is because they want to try, and that's why the QCTO also came out, is that they want to try and map OFO codes to qualifications. So when someone is studying something, there's an OFO code mapped to that person's occupation, and that then links back to a qualification that they're training. And it helps the SETA to do their planning in terms of identifying what is scarce skills, what is critical skills.
Yeah.
So, that is what that helps with.
I suppose to the question on, can OFO codes change for employees year on year? In fact, if they're not changing, then, maybe you've got a problem. Maybe that, you're not developing the person enough. People, I suppose, will stay in roles for multiple years, so I wouldn't advocate necessarily that everyone needs to change every year. But if your OFO code mapping is the same year in, year out, you've probably got a training or a skills development challenge. All right. Your BE and your WSP, aligning your acronyms. You mentioned this earlier, the importance of seeing the two together and not splitting them.
Yes, so we have a couple of...
And I think you really kind of touched on it, why it's so important, but yeah, maybe we want to dig into this a bit more.
Yes, so I've got a few acronyms there. Discuss your WSP with your BEE consultants and your EEs align. So to break that down, just discuss your workplace skills plan, so your plan ahead with your BBBE consultants. Because remember, when you go through verification and your financial year end comes, you reach your financial year end, you then need to start planning for the year ahead. And you need to engage with your BE consultants because they will do all of that calculations. So they will go through your financial year and go through your verification, and then they will start doing the calculations for the new year. So they will be able to give you what is the amount that you need to spend on bursaries, what is the amount you need to spend on learnerships, on training of just Black individuals. So get that calculation as soon as you can from your BE consultants. And again, you need to ensure that it complies with EE, which is employment equity, especially for the larger companies. You have to have that alignment with. We normally follow that I normally follow with companies is when we get to the new financial year, I say to them, right, please get this information from your BBBE consultant. I need to know in terms of all of your learnerships, so the skills development scorecard. There is a category for learnerships, a category for bursaries, disabled learners, so all those categories. Get the amount of spend that you need to incur for each one of those. Then you can start looking at, okay, in terms of BBBE, I need to spend 500,000 on bursaries. However, am I going to give bursaries to employees? Am I going to give bursaries to external learners that are out there that are studying full time? In terms of the learnerships, do I need to look at getting a certain amount of employed learners? So that's learners that are employees in your company that are placed on a learnership. So it's an employed learnership. Or do I have to get unemployed learners in? So get that costing so that you then start understanding what is the type of learnerships you now need to start getting in place. Then in terms of your employment equity, engage with your employment equity consultant or whoever does that within the organization to ensure that the gender and the race gender and race is aligned to your employment equity plan. So when we work with BE consultants, I basically say to them, please give me the gender, the race, and the spend that this company needs to incur for skills development. We then go out and find all that training. We vet the training providers, make sure that they are all accredited, and then we also work with, at times we work with the employment equity consultant as well to make sure that all of that is aligned in terms of employment equity and the plan that the company needs to implement. So it's very important that you integrate these three areas within the business and just planning and discussing and then rolling out. So second point, commencing with finding those training providers. It's very important to really vet the training providers that you use. Make sure that they are accredited and also request the accreditation certificate. Mm-hmm. I've come across numerous cases where the accreditation actually expires in March. So it's very important that you make sure your training provider you're using, the accreditation is valid. Okay, and then conduct your BBBE and EE calculations, which I've covered, and then start implementing your programs. And when you start implementing the programs, make sure you're documenting everything, you're capturing everything to make your WSP process and BE process much smoother when you get to submissions and to verification.
I think there's a few moving parts here. You mentioned there's the skills development facilitator working with your WSP. You're working with your BE consultants. There's an EE consultant, and then there's a training provider. So just within that mix, there's 4 potential different parties that you might be working with as a company. And for big organizations, they're very much used to that. This is how they engage. But imagine for some of our smaller businesses, and I know particularly our agency clients, the bigger ones, and there's only a handful of them, will have dedicated learning and development teams who look after this stuff and people who are focused, who specialize in BE. But for the smaller ones, where they might only have 1 or 2 HR people, it can be a bit of a minefield. And I suppose what's probably a good recommendation is don't stress too much about it. Speak to your SDF. Will know is a good starting place, or if you've got the right training provider, if it's a conversation with us, if it's a conversation with Tania, we can help you diagnose that these are the key areas that you need, and these are the people that you need to bring in. So I'd encourage some of the HR community who are new to this, who are struggling with it, is just to take the first step and bring in somebody who understands the landscape and can pull in the pieces. You might not need all of that. I think when you're looking at the EAPs and the bigger, having that demographic breakdown, you're primarily talking about large entities. So for smaller entities, you might not need that as a separate function altogether. It can be brought in within a smaller framework.
Yeah. So I mean, we work with a lot of small and medium-sized companies who have to comply, and for them, when they work with us, it's a one-stop shop. We sort out your BEE, we sort out your WSP, we sort out your employment equity. We have specialists in those areas. So, and also we really focus on impactful skills development solutions. So yes, we'll tick the boxes, but we will make sure that we put strategies in place. And this is what we discussed end of last year with, what I discussed with Red and Yellow as well, is have impactful solutions. So have a 3-year plan. If you're going to place a learner on learnerships this year, what is the plan for those learners at the end of the year? If you cannot absorb them, then next year place them on a higher level learnership. If they already completed a higher level learnership, that learner can potentially become a bursary candidate. So, these are things that the company has to look at. Have long-term strategies, because then you know that your plan is set out for the next 3 years. Engage with your suppliers. So your black suppliers, who of your black suppliers need development? All black suppliers who are small businesses need some sort of assistance in terms of skills development. So engage with them, find out from them, what are you struggling with? Maybe you can assist them in terms of financial, courses that are accredited financial courses. Also with Red and Yellow, there are so many courses that Red and Yellow offers that are in the digital space, branding space. That's the main thing that small companies and medium-sized businesses struggle with, even large businesses, is the branding side. How do you manage your social media? How do you drive your marketing? How do I ensure that my brand is being portrayed in the way that I want it to be portrayed? So, these are things that you have to start thinking about. Don't just think, oh, WSP submission, BBBEE compliance, employment equity. Bring everything together and make sure that it is beneficial to all parties that are part of this whole process.
Yeah, we try and always stick with a maxim that the compliance, if you want to call it that, which I think probably gives it a disservice, you shouldn't be doing this stuff as a tick box and to get money. It should be the primary focus behind all of this, which is training, is developing people to develop your business. There's a business goal at the end of this. This should all support it, but it shouldn't be your primary motivator. So a good philosophy to try and tie that all back to remember that is the ultimate aim. And then finally, I'm just keeping an eye on time, where there are some questions and just some other things we want to touch on. Maybe we can just have a quick run through just what your verification file looks like, sort of stuff that we need to think about when we're preparing.
So very important, often your BEE consultant would compile this file for you, but it is important for a company to start doing this so that you have all of the information at hand. Because what happens at verification, the verification agent asks you as the company for it, and then you run around trying to find all of this. When we're looking at learnerships, the most important documents you need is the certified ID copy of the learner, the workplace agreement. So that's the agreement that now has replaced the previous learnership agreement. It's now called the workplace-based learning program agreement. It's a long name, but that you basically get from the SETA. The employment contract, so that fixed term contract that learner will be on, you need that particular contract. The pay slips, so the pay slips for every month, put it into a folder. As soon as the learner gets the pay slips or HR sends the pay slips, make sure that you save that into your verification file. Your SETA registration letter, so this is a very important point. Verification agents now want the actual letter that is on the SETA letterhead that shows the learners have been enrolled and registered on that particular learnership, and that you get from your training provider. So you don't have to run around looking for that. Your training provider has to enroll the learners and they get that letter. So just request a letter from them. CVs and qualifications is not a must, but it would be ideal to keep that in the pack. The accreditation certificate of the training provider, as well as your invoice to the training provider for that for that learning program, as well as the proof of payment, because that is what the verification agent wants to see. One tip: always try and make sure that the SAQA ID of that qualification is on the invoice. It makes the BE verification agent's life a bit easier. It makes your life easier, because when they ask you for, is it accredited, where's the SAQA number, you have no idea. Just try to put it on the invoices. It just makes life a bit easier. In terms of bursaries, again, you learn a certified ID. Very important, the registration with the institution. So there is a letter that the institution can give you stating that the learner was registered on this particular qualification. And again, very important, it must be in the period, in your financial year period. So they can't give you a registration letter from 2018 when their program started. It has to be a registration letter from your that sits within your financial year. Then a statement of results. It's also important, if it's a second year student, third year student, you want to see the results of the learner. How are they performing? You don't really want to be giving a bursary to someone who is actually failing hopelessly and is probably not going to re-register the next year or will be kicked out. Statement of account before the bursary is allocated, because the verification agent wants to see, right, this learner was outstanding with a certain amount of money. Then you've made the payment, so keep the proof of payment. And then get the statement of account showing that that bursary amount was allocated to the learner. Very, very important, because a lot forget this element, and when they check on the learner a year later, they find out that the learner actually was never allocated this funding. So it's important to get that. And then the bursary agreement between the company and obviously the learner that's being awarded the bursary.
So this stuff is, I mean, this stuff is, we as a private education institution, a training provider, we can testify, and I'm sure many of the people on these calls have like at the last minute, the 13th hour, emailed us, chased us up, we need this, we need that. One of the things I think that we understand these questions come. We know that we'd love it always to be a month in advance. We know that isn't always practical. So I think we pride ourselves, and hopefully, there's some clients, and Tania can attest to this as well. If you are looking for any of these programs, we realize that actually being able to turn this documentation around and get you the information in incredibly short order is very, very valuable, and helps manage your own stress and anxiety. So we pay enormous attention to that. And with the bursaries, we collect all of the information and packs up front, because we know it's gonna be asked at the end. So we're able to get all of that stuff within 24 hours or 48 hours of actually committing to a bursary. And obviously, when the results come out at the end, we send that all through.
Yeah.
All right, and then SETA funding. I think maybe we can we go very quick through here? We've got we've got 9 minutes left. There are some questions. I have to apologize to Rudy, who I think had hoped to quickly run through some of our programs as well. We might run short of time, but we will share everything afterwards. And if there are questions, get in touch. But let's quickly whip through this, and then let's get into some questions.
Okay, so quickly, if a company is spending 60,000 Rand on a learnership and you manage to get 30,000 Rand for that particular learnership from your SETA, you are actually saving. It's actually costing you 30,000 Rand to run that learnership. Because remember, under BE, they don't care what money you're getting from the SETA. It's not seen as double dipping. So you would be paying 60,000 for this learnership, and when under BBEE, you will be claiming 60,000 Rand, irrespective of the fact that you might have received 30,000 Rand towards that fund, that particular qualification. This is why it's important to apply for that funding, because in the long run, it can really start helping your company in terms of the spend that they're incurring on these learning programs.
Great.
That's as quick as I could do it.
Just a quick, we've red and yellow. We work across the skills development matrix. Learnerships, bursaries. We have accredited online courses and custom and skills programs. So we can help you with all of those sorts of things through the entire transformation journey, all the way through from learnerships up to internships, apprenticeships, all the way up to execs and senior management. Getting quickly through this, and then if you're looking for further information, we've got two very helpful guides, a SETA funding guide and a learnership guide with a lot more information. We'll share the links. Don't worry now if we're going very quickly. You can Google them very easily as well. We are a digital marketing school, so we make sure you can find them easily. So go and read those, download them. They're all free and they're very helpful. All right, so just a few questions and answers. And if we do run short on time, we are going to have a hard stop at 10. We won't keep you longer. We'll get back to you a little bit later. First up from Mariana. She says she's not a BE expert, don't worry. We're all learning all the time, but she wants to know why a company would only go for learnerships for compliance. What about internships? Do internships give less points?
Internships are a bit of a challenge at the moment because of the nature of a verification agent. They basically just want to tick the box. So they don't understand that internships and graduate programs are not, it's not a qualification. Whereas a learnership, the learner is getting a certificate, there's a SAQA ID. Internships and graduates are not. These are learners that have already achieved a qualification, are coming in and gaining work experience. So over the past 2 years now, it has been a huge issue because verification agents have been rejecting companies' internships and graduate company. We actually I found solutions to that and solutions in terms of how to get your internships and graduate programs spend recognized under BBBEE. And we're also piloting another new solution, which if everything gets accepted and goes well, we will be launching full on with this going forward, probably within the next 3-4 months. But there are ways around ensuring that your internship and graduate program the spend can be claimed under BBBEE. And sorry, that's why they mainly go for learnerships, because learnerships is a category where they can get the points and the SAQA ID is there.
Great. Next, a question from Karen. Is there a summary of, I think it's a very useful question. I don't know that there is one, a summary of all SETA funding windows currently open?
Yes, so I actually do that on a weekly basis. Is we actually go to every single SETA site and we pull down not only the funding windows, but the tenders as well. So if anyone wants access to that, you're most welcome to contact me and we can share that with you. It definitely makes it much easier to just look at one document and see all of the windows.
Another question from Anonymous, non-levy paying companies. Is it beneficial for them to submit a WSP?
Yes. So a lot of companies think they don't need to comply, they're a small company, but the one challenge is that if you want to apply for funding from any of the SETAs, the first criteria they look at is, did you submit a WSP in the previous year? And if you didn't submit a WSP, then immediately they do not look at your funding application. So I'm a small business and we submit that WSP every single year and I receive nothing back in terms of the mandatory grant for submitting it, but I make sure that I submit it because there might come an opportunity where I want to apply for funding and my chances will be zero if I didn't submit my WSP. So yes, please, if you're not a non-levy paying, they actually allocate a specific levy number to you.
Then a question from Martine. She wants to know whether you can share the link for the Services SETA OFO mapping tool.
Yes, so
yes.
I'll pull that from the site. It's actually on the homepage of the Services SETA right at the bottom, but I can share that with Red and Yellow, and when you send out the recording and everything from this discussion, you can include it in there.
Fantastic. A question from Osanko, can schools submit WSPs and ATRs?
So I have actually submitted a WSP for a school, but it depends it depends why the school wants to submit the WSP. I think that is the most important question. So you're welcome to also email me or get in touch with Red and Yellow and get my contact details so that I can just find out exactly why a school would want to submit a WSP, because they fall under a completely different category. They don't report to you fall under Umalusi and you don't actually report to SETAs. So just get in contact with me so I can understand that
okay.
need.
And then Anonymous would like to know, do we include the facilitator's time away from their desk in the cost for training? Should it be an internal training for the ATR reporting, or is it only the delegates that attend the training?
So it is normally only the delegates. Under BBBEE, you can claim the cost, the time that particular individual takes to do the training. You can claim up that under BBBEE spend, but in terms of the reporting, you can't specifically claim the facilitator cost. You can claim only the learners that attended that training of the facilitator.
Okay, I've just got an eye on time. We've got 2 minutes. I do want to hard stop. What I am going to say is that for anyone who wants to stay on, I think we'll extend for 10 minutes. My colleague Rudy is going to run through some of our upcoming programs for those who are interested. So for those who aren't, I'm hoping that many of you will stick around if you can, but for those who can't, we'll obviously share this. We wanted to make sure we focus on the conversation in the time allotted. Some final few questions. If we don't get to you, pop us a mail, pick up with Tania. We'll share all of her details, and she's only too happy to engage with you. Temba has asked about work integrated learning. We didn't discuss it today, but I don't think that's not because it's not important.
Yeah, work integrated learning. So I know with those WIL learners, there is funding that SETAs give for WIL learners. I'm not sure because the question doesn't seem to be complete. What exactly do you want to know about work integrated learning? Again, you can contact us after the webinar just to get more information from us on that.
And then Monwa BC's question around the 30,000 effective cost offset from funding wants to know whether that's the funding or tax rebate isn't subject to a completed learnership. Now, I think I know the answer to that, but I'm going to hand over to Tania to make sure that we get the right one.
Yes, so how the tax rebates work is that you get for the commencement of the learnership, you get that commencement amount, and then you only get the what do they call it? It's not conclusion, the termination at the end of the learnership. Right. So the completion. When the learner has completed the learnership, then you are allowed to then access that portion of the tax rebate. If the learner did not finish, you cannot apply for that completion portion.
And the point I suppose to just build on that is that that's an additional cost saving over a longer. Granted, that comes later. It's only when you actually file your tax returns and calculate your tax, you can actually reduce your tax liability. So that 30,000 Rand saving actually can be an even greater saving. So I think that brings us to the end. It is 11 o'clock on the dot. For those who are keen just to hear a little bit more about some of our exciting and cutting edge upcoming programs, please stick around. We won't be more than 5 or 10 minutes. For those who need to drop off, thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Tania, for joining us again. It's been incredible. I mean, we didn't whip through the time. We spent a lot of time having a really, really good conversation. My apologies to Rudy, who I've shunted to the end. But thank you to Rudy for letting us take the time to have, I thought, a really, really great conversation. We'll share all of this. Thank you, everyone. For those who want to drop off, farewell. Have a great Thursday. For those who are sticking around, Rudy, are you there?
Can you guys hear me?
Can hear you.
And can you see me?
I will do your driving for you. I will be your driver today, Rudy. So you just tell me when you want me to move.
No problem. Okay, I see most people have actually stayed on. Fantastic.
Yay.
Yeah. Thank you, Tania. Always very informative with these sort of sessions. And obviously, like the topic says, it's a way just to get on the front foot with regards to skills development for 2021. So just on the screen, you will see that we have some bursary sponsorships that we are obviously driving for, and well-deserving students that we have enrolled and still enrolling for these programs. One I'd definitely want to mention, which is our new program. You'll see it as our three-year degree, our BCom degree. I'm very proud to announce that. It will be kicking off from March. So there are loads of students that we are currently obviously processing their applications who are going for that degree, as well as our BA Visual Communication degree. And you'll see as well, we've got our 1-year advanced diplomas ranging from our very popular and well-attended marketing and advertising communications to user-centered design, copywriting, as well as the digital marketing. And then, of course, our higher certificates, which is in graphic design and creating digital content. Now, we obviously would love your support in ensuring that our students do reap the rewards from corporate sponsorships in South Africa, and of course the paperwork side of things, which we commit to in terms of within a 48-hour turnaround time, and making sure that we get all the necessary paperwork across to you. And our drive is to take that headache away from you. And in line with our social responsibility of at least, and we've always, achieved higher than this, but at least 10% of our full-time students do not need to be paying for their tuition to study with Red and Yellow. But a huge chunk of that means we need the support from you guys, and we will, as I mentioned, try and make the process as smooth and a successful one, which we have a good track record, I believe. So carrying on there. Yeah. Next slide, please, Andrew. And then speaking to our learnership programs, this is just a snippet from our course and programs calendar, which can be found on the website. And within this deck, which we will be sharing, it makes it easy as well to be able just to access each of these programs. We do run them as both employed and unemployed learnerships. And we would obviously put out an urgent call, because as you can see, these are upcoming dates and very much around the corner. So if there are any one of you who are here would love to chat about these learnership programs, please do not hesitate to get in touch, and we will be able to obviously walk you through the process and ensure that the documentation and the application process, as well as a smooth one. We tend to be very quick on these, and we have our very own verifications officer, Wilhelmine, who can always jump on any meeting just to address any questions or any concerns before we obviously help you out with these learnership programs. Next slide, Andrew. Very exciting. So another one of our initiatives is our custom programs. Now these, range from
Sorry, really.
I just saw a nice pretty face, and yes, bad driving. So these are custom programs. These are a blend of either customized learnerships or skills programs, blended skills programs, so that you'll recognize 2 unit standards. We'll include 2 unit standards on there based on either an online course and including some fully customized workshops. So generally a lot of work goes into these, as we obviously want to make sure that from an objective perspective, we help align these programs to speak to exactly that, whatever the industry is. We've worked with multiple kinds of companies in putting these together. For instance, a UX and UI employed learnership program for a major bank, not just in South Africa, but in Africa. In fact, it is the largest bank in Africa. I'm not trying to give any names away there. And a digital marketing unemployed learnership for a New York stock Stock Exchange listed multinational. Very exciting initiative there. They've come to us to put this together for them. So it's a 3-year sort of view with this type of learnership, as they want to obviously make sure that they are well within their BE points, etc. So we have a long-term vision with them there. A design thinking workshop series for a financial regulatory agency. As you can see, it does differ in terms of industry, and but as Red and Yellow, we obviously understand the importance of being a digital focused and digital first company, on being able to align any of these programs to be able to meet your objectives. You'll see there's also another digital marketing for client services skills program for a global media agency that we have put together. A very good success rate with that, and the social media masterclass series for another major bank in South Africa, and accredited online courses for major telecommunications groups. So various ways of us customizing programs, whether that be through accredited online courses or through workshop series or skills programs or learnerships. There's many ways we can call it skin this cat. So you obviously just get in touch with us, and we will obviously try and put something together for you and your team. Next slide, please, Andrew. And I think that's it.
Thank you so much to everyone. Thanks, Rudy. Thanks for being so patient. Thank you, Tania, for a fantastic conversation. Thanks for all the great questions, everyone. If we didn't get to your question, it wasn't addressed, we'll make sure we pick it up separately. If you've got follow-up questions, email addresses are there. We can route it to the right person. Then we will be following up with an email, with recordings, with links, with a copy of the deck. But if there's anything we can help you with, just get in touch. Yeah, we're here to help. We know the next couple of months are busy for everyone, and we're raring and ready to go. So have a fantastic Thursday, everyone, and an even better 2021. Thanks for joining. Bye-bye.